We read in this week's parsha, Parshas Vayeishev. Vayeishev Yaakov Beretz Muguri Ovid Beretz Canaan. Yaakov settled in the land of the sojournings of his father, in the land of Canaan. Over here, the Orach Chaim HaKodesh points out obvious questions. Why is it important for the Torah to reveal to us where he settled? Shalokvarum Parsha Kodemes, in the previous portion, when Yaakov returned from Paddan Aram, he had come to Hebron. He had come to the location where his parents were and where his grandfather was. He Hebron Asher Gorsham Avram v'Yitzchok. He returned to Hebron, which was the community that Avram and Yitzchok had dwelt. In addition, what does it have to tell us? Eretz Muguri Oviv Eretz Canaan, in the sojournings of his father in the land of Canaan. So again, we know where Hebron is. Hebron is in Canaan. So what seems to be all this is superfluous? What exactly is the value of this? I'd once mentioned the morale of Prague is a question. The reason why ultimately we went to Egypt was because of the conflict between the parts, the Bris Ben Absorim, that Avram had a prophecy. As it said, the dark dread came upon him, and he said to Avram, Ger Yezaracha Beretz Elohim, your progeny will be strangers in the land which is not theirs, and they will be, for how many years? Strangers in the land which is not theirs, 400 years. Ba'avodum v'inu osam arba me'er shana. They will be enslaved, they will be afflicted 400 years. After that period of time, they're going to go out with great wealth. They will go out great wealth. We were on 210 years in Egypt. Weren't they 400 years? So Chazal tell us, Geri Zar Acho, that the calculation, the time begins from the birth of Yitzchok. Because it was given, this prophecy was given to Avram. When he had the prophecy, Yitzchok wasn't yet born. Geri Zar Acho. Your children, your progeny will be strangers in the land which is not theirs. They will be enslaved. They will be afflicted for 400 years. So if you calculate the time from the birth of Yitzchok till we left Egypt, it was 400 years. But factually, we weren't afflicted. It's true, Egypt was bondage. And even Egypt, when did the bondage actually start? That was only after that whole generation passed away. So it wasn't when we first came to Egypt. See, even Egypt wasn't 410 years. So where do we have the bondage and where do we have the affliction? It's neither. So the majority of the years, factually, are not there in terms of strangers in the land that's not yours, to be enslaved and to be afflicted. Where is it? So the morale of Prague explains that in terms of who the Avos HaKadoshim were, who the holy patriarchs were, each of them was fully dedicated, imbued only with Kedusha and with spirituality. What was Canaan? Canaan, as the Torah describes Canaan, we speak of the abominations of Canaan, the perversions of Canaan, the paganism of Canaan. Everything unholy was Canaan. If that's the case, a person who's so spiritually attuned, how did he experience the environment, being in such an environment which was the antithesis and contrary to everything he stood for? It's painful. Therefore, that's the affliction. You're strangers in a land that's not yours, and you're being afflicted. Therefore, as a result of that, strangers, we don't belong here. It's not our place. And we're pained by being here. There wasn't a moment they ever felt that that was their location. Therefore, we're able to start calculating the time from the birth of Yitzchak. There were strangers in the land that was not theirs. As we came close to Egypt, we find that Yaakov himself, when he says, I must go down, see my son Yossi before I die. But he was very worried. God comes to him in a dream. Al Teira Meir de Mitzrayim. Don't be fearful to go down to Egypt. You will go and you will return. What was he afraid of? Yaakov fought an angel. Yaakov raised a family of 11 sons in Paddan Aram. What is he afraid of Egypt? What is he worried about? He understands what Egypt is. We're not speaking about the physicality of Egypt. We're talking about, spiritually speaking, what is Egypt? It's a debasedness which is nothing compared to it. If that's the case, how is it going to affect the future generations of my children? Are we going to survive it? To be able to ultimately come to Sinai? To become God's chosen people? To what degree are we going to erode spiritually? To what degree? Hashem gives him the guarantee. Al Tira Meir de Mitzrayim. Don't be fearful. It'll work out somehow. Even though we did become pagans in Egypt, Levi was the only tribe that wasn't subject to bondage, and therefore they were never involved in paganism. But the rest of them, they were subject to the bondage. And they did become pagans, the vast majority, as the Malachim said, Elu of the Avodah Zarah, Elu of the Avodah Zarah. Why are you destroying the Egyptians? Why are the Jews any better than the Egyptians? So Hashem answered the Malachim, the angels, because they were subject to bondage. They only became pagans, not by choice. It was their circumstance which they were drawn into it. The masters, it was their choice to be pagans. That's the difference. But factually, we actually fell to the 49th level of impurity. Memter Shari Tuma. Yaakov had what to be worried about. So therefore, as a result of this, since every aspect of the experience was pain and suffering and worry because of who they were and what their values were, therefore the bondage, we can begin calculating the bondage and the affliction from when? From the birth of Yitzchak, for this reason. Because they gave him. And therefore it's referred to Vayeishev Yaakov Beretz Megurei Oviv. What's Megurei? The sojourning. I'm only a sojourner. They never, even Canaan, which ultimately will be ours, but because of what he was exposed to, it's Megurei Oviv. It's only the sojournings. It's the location where his father felt out of place. It's not his place. He had nowhere better to be. So therefore, he had to be there. But in terms of what was his relation to the location, he had no relation to the location. Therefore, it's Megurei Oviv. Over here, the Balaturim explains the word Megurei. He says the Yud in the word Megurei is Kfufa. It's like bends down. Kimin Chof. It looks like a Chof. Omer, Masha, Zochu, Esav, L'chalakover Hazeh. It's interesting. We find that Yaakov sent a very valuable gift to Esav to somehow to appease him, to diffuse his anger. Herds, flocks, even diamonds he sent. Why did Esav merit all this glory? Tremendous glory. Factually, Yaakov honored him tremendously. The Schara Kovu Sh'osel Aviv. All the years that Yaakov was away, he was away for 34 years, Esav honored his father tremendously, in a very special way. So why did he merit all this honor? Because God always repays a person measure for measure. Because he honored his father Yitzchak, therefore Hashem accorded Esav this special honor. Va'afal pi sheberchoni ovi basura brachos. Yet Yaakov says, although my father blessed me with 10 blessings, hutzrachti lishloach asura dvorim, in terms of the gift that Yaakov had sent to Esav, there were 10 various different types of species. Kedichsiv, izem osayim, Therefore, as a result of this, he says, although my father gave me 10 blessings, I had to send 10 gifts to Esav. So therefore what? First of all, why did he give him 10 blessings? As we always explain. We always find a reoccurrence of 10. Eliezer was sent with 10 camels by Avram to locate a wife for Yitzchak. Why 10? Why is it so important for us to know the number of camels? 10 always corresponds to Basar Maimoros Niver Olam. 10 utterances, the world, through 10 utterances of God, the world was created. This is to facilitate the objective of those 10 utterances. We have to locate a matriarch to have a future. Without a matriarch, the patriarch is meaningless. This is to establish a Klal Yisrael. Yitzchak gave 10 blessings to Yaakov. 10. Not 9 blessings, not 11 blessings. 10. Because again, who is the chosen of the patriarchs? Yaakov. He will facilitate that. He will father the 12 tribes. His children ultimately will be the Klal Yisrael. They will stand at Sinai and say, Nasa v'nishma. Therefore, it's 10 blessings. And he did, but he says, despite that I received 10 blessings, I had to send Esav 10 different aspects within that gift that I sent him. Eilech v'okuf atzmi v'achabed es ovi b'chevron. I will go and I will submit and I will honor my father in Hebron. What does this mean? I mean, Yaakov didn't want to honor his father. Of course he wanted to honor his father. He says, I will go v'okuf. I will submit. Because why did my brother merit all this glory? Because he honored our father. And therefore he merited that glory. Despite that I had the 10 blessings. But I had to send him a gift. Why is that? What does one thing have to do with another? Do you know what it means to be exposed to Esav? The man personified evil. He'd say, you were in his proximity. But do you know what it means? That you have to be associated. You have to submit to that person. I have 10 blessings. Maybe that's why I have all this wealth. But how did I expend that wealth? The expenditure of that wealth was to give glory to Esav. So therefore, I was depleted. The blessings themselves actually were depleted. Because I had to attach myself and give honor to who? Who did I give honor to? To evil. When you give honor to evil, even though you mean l'shem shamayim, it's a certain degree of association. It causes depletion. Therefore, I will go and submit to my father, give him the honor. Of course I'll give him honor. But in a special way, of course I have to be restored. Because if I give honor to my father, as Esav received the honor, I'll have that glory. The honor, but it's not honor for himself. He needs to be restored because he was depleted because of the gift that he gave to Esav, but it wasn't just giving away material. It was acknowledging Esav. We find that because he said Adoni, he said Avdecho, I'm your servant. He said it 8 times. God says because you submitted to Esav 8 times, they will have kings 8 generations before you will have kings. If you see the kings that they appointed, there were 8 which preceded us. Why? Because you submitted. You said Avdecho. You're his servant. You're submitting to evil. So he'd say he had no choice. He had no choice. He did have a choice. Because we find within Chazal, within the Midrash, quotes a verse, you pull the ears of a sleeping dog. Esav would the farthest thing from his mind. He was worried. So he actually activated this man. He incited him. Because you incited him, now you have to deal with your problem. But if you would have never incited him, you would have never had to send the gift. You would have never had to say, submit to him, say, Abdecho. Therefore, you mean you said Abdecho? So you could say, did I have a choice? Of course you had a choice. You shouldn't have incited him initially. You should have just gone and not alert him that you're on your way. But again, so therefore the Megure, it's the Yud Chvufa, it's a bent Yud which it looks similar to a Chaf. I will submit and honor my father to have that honor, that glory guaranteed. Because now it's going to be a midah connected midah. As I honor my father, Hashem will give me that honor. But not honor for honor, to restore the honor which I represent, because I've been depleted, because I offered that honor through the gift that I gave to Esav. So therefore it was Megurei Oviv. As the Maral said, over here the Ramban says something interesting. Vayeishev Yaakov beretz Megurei Oviv. Avol Yaakov, he says, Ki Omar Shalufei Esav Yoshu beretz Achuzosam. The Torah tells us in the previous portion that the princes of Esav, they settled in the land of their portion, Har Seir. Klomar, Ha'oretz shelo kolem lachusas olam. That's their location forever, till the end of time. Until V'olo Moshim Har Tzil Nishboris Haraisov. Till Mashiach. That is their location. That's the Edomite location. Avol Yaakov Yoshev Ger Ka'oviv Be'eretz Lo Lahim. He settled in land as a stranger, like his father was a stranger. It's a land which is not theirs. El Canaan. It's the Canaanites. That's what the Torah says, Canaan. HaKavona, what is the intent of the Torah? Lahagid. Kein bochrim logor be'eretz hanivcheres. They chose to dwell in the chosen location, which is Eretz Canaan. But nevertheless, but because they chose to live as strangers in the land, not as it's their land, but it was the Canaanites' land, therefore this was a fulfillment of the what? Of the decree. For 400 years you were strangers in a land that's not yours. For Lo Beisav, which is not the case by Esav. They settled in a permanent way. Yaakov levado yikro lem zera. The decree of Geir Zaracho, strangers will be your progeny. But who's the progeny of Avram? Yaakov is the progeny of Avram, not Esav. Therefore, it was crucial for Yaakov to relate and function and exist within the land similar to his father, because he had to fulfill Geir Zaracho. So he never for a moment acted or behaved as if he is the master of the location. This is not my place. When will it be my location? When God gives it. But until then, not. This is not like the Maral. This is the Geir Zaracho. So over here, the Kli Yoker says something interesting. He says that Bikesh Yaakov Leishiv B'Shalvo. Yaakov wanted to have some tranquility. It's such tragedies. He spent 20 years with Lavan. He fled initially from his parents' home when he was 63. He spent 14 years in the Yeshivas Aver, studying for 14 years to prepare himself to leave Eretz Yisrael. 20 years with Lavan. Then he had to confront Esav. Then his daughter Dinah is raped. Then his wife Rachel passes away as a young woman. And then after Rachel passes away, his son Reuven goes and takes his bed out of the tent of Bilhah and puts it in the tent of Leah, which is the equivalent of cohabiting with the concubine of his father, one after another. Enough. Yeshiv Yaakov. Bikesh Yaakov Leishiv B'Shalva. He says, I've been through so much, I need some tranquility. I want a respite of all this unceasing pain and suffering. It's because he wanted Leib B'Shalva. Therefore, the strife between Yosef and his brothers came about because he wanted Shalva. So here the Kli Yoker says something interesting. But if you want to have tranquility, it becomes a problem. Because you have to be a stranger in the land. It's not enough just to be a stranger. You have to be v'inu. You have to be in a state of affliction. You want tranquility. But if you have tranquility, it interrupts the flow. You need 400 consecutive years of what? Stranger in a land being afflicted. But if you want shalva, that means you're not going to be in an afflicted state. So if you feel the affliction, fine. But if you want, so I want tranquility. You mean somehow you're going to make peace with your location. God says you're not going to make peace. I will create a setting that you will not have a moment's peace. The strife, and ultimately he believed Yosef was was devoured by a beast, he mourned, he grieved deeply for 22 years. But it's very interesting. Why was Yosef absent from his father 22 years? Was measure for measure. Mida keneged mida. Because since his mother originally said, Yom HaChodim, you'll go for a short period of time, and he stayed for 22 years. So just as he did not honor his parents for 22 years, Yosef was absent, and to Yaakov, Yosef was everything. He ben zkunim lo. He was the most special of his children. Therefore, that was the mida keneged mida. So it's interesting. It seems to be, but if he would have honored his parents for those 20 years, Yosef would have never disappeared. That means he wouldn't have grieved and wouldn't have suffered to the degree that he suffered. He wouldn't have. So it's interesting. Maybe he would have gone to Egypt earlier. Maybe. Don't know. But it seems to be, it's only, so if that's the case, what about Bikesh Leishi B'Shalva? If we're saying the only reason why the tragedy of Yosef came about is because Yaakov Bikesh Leishi B'Shalva, he wanted to be in a state of tranquility. If not for that, it wouldn't have happened. But he had to be absent 22 years. Because otherwise, how does he atone for the 22 years? The Torah tells us that Yosef was more beloved to Yaakov than all his children. Keep ben zekunim though, because he was ben zekunim. So Rashi cites three interpretations of zekunim. He was born to him in his old age. That's one interpretation. Or as the Targum says, he was the wisest of his children, like a person's an elderly sage wisdom. Therefore, he shared everything with him because he was the wisest of his children. Or ben zekunim, because facially, his facial features were identical to his father, which to Yaakov was special, was an indication of something. And we always say a face in Hebrew is panim. Panim is pinim. The face always reflects what's within a person. Since his facial features were identical to his father, he understood that all his characteristics were very similar to his father. His potential was similar to his father. So because Yaakov understood that Yosef's potential was similar to his father, now what was Yaakov? What did Yaakov? Yaakov had an ability, had a certain resiliency that he could not be affected. Despite that he was in Padan Aram, he raised 11 children. And all, these are the Shiftei Koch, these are holy children. He was able to insulate his family, that they weren't affected to a degree. In Lavan Garti, Mitzvah Shamarti. Although I was with Lavan, I observed, I adhered to the 613 precepts. I did not learn from his evil ways. It's as if he didn't exist. He was in a spiritual cocoon. That's what Yaakov was. Yosef had that same potential. That he was able to create an insular environment and survive regardless of what the environment is. As we see, he went to Egypt, and he's referred to as Yosef HaTzadik. He left a tzaddik, and he remained a tzaddik. How could you remain a tzaddik? You have no support system. How do you survive it? The answer is because Yosef has he possesses all the characteristics of his father. This is Zivi Kunin, his facial features. His ponim was revealed the pinim. That the pinim, the internal aspects of Yosef, was similar to his father. That's the reason. Now, had a difficulty. The bracha which Yaakov received from his father, Yitzchak, was Hakol Kol Yaakov Hayidai Midei Esav. The voice is the voice of Yaakov, and the hands are the hands of Esav. So the Midrash tells us that as long as the voice is the voice of Yaakov, the hands cannot be the hands of Esav. We are not vulnerable to Esav's attack. But if Chas v'Sholom, God forbid, the voice is not the voice of Yaakov, the Jews are not sufficiently studying Torah, and they're not praying as they should pray, Tefillah, then the Yadayim, the Esav, the hands of Esav, was vulnerable, was subject to their what? To be hurt very seriously by them. Okay? Now, The Torah tells us that Yosef was the 11th child of Yaakov. And he was born in the 14th year of being in the home of Lavan. Okay? After his 11th child was born, he informs Lavan he's returning after being there 14 years. So Lavan negotiates with him, but you realize if you leave, through my divination, I realize all the blessing that came to me is only because of you. Whatever your wages, we'll work out the wage, stay longer. So Yaakov says, when am I going to earn wealth for my family? So they negotiated something. But why, when Yosef was born, did Yaakov want to return? So Rashi cites the Midrash, which is a verse in Ovadia, that Ovadia says that the house of Yaakov is Eish, the house of Yosef is Lahov, is a flame, and the house of Esav is Kash, is straw. If you have a fire and you have straw, the fire, because it doesn't reach out, because it doesn't have a flame, cannot consume the straw. But if you have a flame, the flame reaches out and consumes the straw. So therefore, Yosef's class is called Sitno Shel Esav. He is the antagonist of Esav. So until Yosef was born, Yaakov couldn't return because he has to confront Esav. But now that Yosef is born, he's guaranteed. He has nothing to worry any longer because he's the Lahava, he's the flame. He will consume the Esav. He will consume the straw. So the difficulty seemingly is, but factually, if the kol is kol Yaakov, if the voice is the voice of Yaakov, Yaakov is not vulnerable to Esav. And if Yaakov's voice is not the voice of Yaakov, Yosef is not a Lahava, because the flame is only an extension of the fire. But if the fire doesn't burn, then you have no flame. So why did he have to wait for Yosef to be born to go back? Seemingly, if he's Yaakov, and he's secure in his voice, that he's sufficient learning Torah and praying as he should, what do you have to wait for the birth of Yosef? So what exactly is the Lahava? What do we need the flame of Yosef to consume the straw? What do we need it for? So I was thinking that it's true. Hakol kol Yaakov, when the voice is the voice of Yaakov, the hands are not the hands of Esav. We are not vulnerable. What does that mean? Although we're not vulnerable to their attack, but factually, Esav coexists with us. So there's a coexistence of Yaakov and Esav. But if Esav coexists with us, Esav is evil. Esav's behavior generates what? It generates impure forces. It generates an environment. So presently, the kol is kol Yaakov. But what that evil that he generates, that he gives off, ultimately will subliminally erode the Kol Yaakov. So over time, the Kol Yaakov will no longer be Kol Yaakov because of the influences, the subliminal influences of Esav. How do you counter that? Right now I'm safe. But over a short period of time, coexisting with him, it creates a serious problem. It will undermine the quality of the Kol Yaakov. That's the Lahava. That's what Yosef provides. He provides the flame. He goes and he counters. He actually vaporizes the influences of Esav. The Esav doesn't affect us. So the Yosef secures and guarantees the purity of Torah. That Torah is not compromised. Presently, Yaakov's here, Torah is not compromised. But ultimately will be compromised. Because there's the Esav coexisting with Yaakov. When the Lahava, the flame goes out, what does the Lahava do? It vaporizes. It consumes it. It consumes those influences. Therefore, we were able to maintain and retain our pristine state and the purity of Torah for that reason. So that guarantees the Kol remains the Kol Yaakov. That's the understanding. Seemingly, we see that Yosef, he possessed two things. He possessed the characteristics of his father, that he could deal with exile, as he did. He survived all by himself in exile. In addition, he was able to counter the influences of Esav, that Esav cannot at any level erode the quality of the Kol Yaakov. Now, it's interesting. There was a story during World War II when the Mir Yeshiva, they were either in Kobe, Japan, or in Shanghai, and there was some kind of decree that was issued against the Jewish community. And the question was to go to the Japanese or Chinese official and bribe him. So one of the people said, don't do it. So he says, when we were in Europe, there were endless decrees, and we would go and we'd bribe the ministers, the government, and that's how the decree was rescinded or annulled. So why shouldn't we do it? So the person had said, the Ramban writes that why is the Torah so detail-oriented regarding how Yaakov dealt with Esav? He prayed, he prepared for war, he sent the gift. So the Ramban writes, because this is to teach us for the future that whenever we're subject to the interaction with Esav, this is how we have to deal with Esav. With the descendants of Esav, the Edomites. We have to pray, we have to send gifts, bribery, and we have to prepare for war in terms of even to flee from harm. That's what we have to do. So he said, this person, that's only the interaction between Yaakov, the Jews, and the descendants of Esav. The Orientals, they're not descendants of Esav. Therefore, it's going to have a negative reaction. Don't do it. That's not the way to do it. That's not the way to do it. So they didn't. It says, Yosef is lahava. He's a flame. But what does he consume? He consumes the kash. His ability is only to counter and vaporize the influence of Edom. What about the influence of Egypt? Influence of Egypt, not the same. It's a different level of influence. Mitzrayim, that's Chom. These are the descendants of Chom. This is not Edom. So there, of course, we find, why is Parshas Vichi Parshas Stuma? Why is it a closed portion? So the Midrash tells us, because when Yaakov passed away, Nistmu Einayim V'libim Shel Yisrael, the eyes and the hearts of the Jews became sealed. This was the first stage of bondage. And ultimately, it became worse. It intensified when that whole generation passed away. But if you have Yosef counters. He's the counterforce. Yosef is only counterforce for Edom. He's not the counterforce for the influences of Egypt. Of course, he did much there. He contended with Golus, because in regard to that, he has the characteristic of his father. He set things in place for the future. But factually, we began to a degree, we were affected by the bondage. Maybe. We find, which I pointed out a number of times, that when Yitzchak married Rivka, the Torah says that Avram passed away. And Yishmael and Yitzchak and Yishmael buried him. Passed away at a ripe old age, good old age, and Yitzchak and Yishmael buried him. But factually, Avram didn't pass away until Yaakov and Esau were 15 years old. So he was 40, and we have another 35 years. He lived 35 years longer, Avram Avinu. But yet the Torah says he passed away. What does Torah state? That he passed away where he was alive? And the same thing with Yitzchak. It says that when Yaakov came back, it says that Esav and Yaakov buried Yitzchak. But he didn't die then. He was alive at the time of the Mechiras Yosef, when Yosef was sold into slavery. So why does it say he passed away? So the way we explained it was that the moment the new patriarch and matriarch take over, the old patriarch becomes a private citizen. So for all intents and purposes, purposes, vis-a-vis the destiny of Klal Yisrael, his input is already completed. Whatever he contributed, that's completed. Now, it's the new patriarch and matriarch, what they contribute. Once Yaakov returns, his mother passed away already. Esav and Yaakov buried their father in North Machpelah. So for all intents and purposes, he's not relevant any longer. He's not relevant regarding his input for Klal Yisrael. This is what it is. So he takes over. Now, after Yaakov passes away, who's going to assume the mantle of leadership? Yosef. Yosef was the viceroy in Egypt. He asked him to take an oath. Promise me that I will not be buried in Egypt. I want to be buried in the Marsa Machpelah. And he gave him the guarantee. Took an oath. Now, there's difficulty here. We find that when he asked him to take the oath to be buried in the Marsa Machpelah, he goes and recounts something to Yosef. And he says to his son Yosef, Vani beboi pan aram mi padan. Vani bo mi padon. When I was returning from Padon, that's Choron. Mesa olai rochel be'eretz Canaan baderech. Rochel passed away on the way, but it was in the land of Canaan. Both kivras eretz lovo Ephrosa. We were at a short distance from Ephros, from that Beis Lechem, from the location of the Marsa Machpelah. V'ekberesh shom baderech Ephros. That period on the way, b'derech Ephros, on the way to Ephros. He Beis Lechem. What's Ephros? That's Beis Lechem. So what is he telling Yosef exactly? So he explains. V'ekberesh shom. He buried her on the way. Rachel was the mother of Yosef. I didn't even take her to Beis Lechem to bring her into the land. And I know all these years you're harboring ill feeling against me. This is what Yaakov says to Yosef. Yaakov is about to pass away. He's 147 years old. He's like, all the years since your mother passed away, I know you've been harboring in your heart ill feeling towards me. But I want you to know, the reason why I buried there was through divine dictate. That's why I buried her there. That should be assistance for her children, for Klal Yisrael. When they will go into exile to go to Bavel, Babylon, they're going to pass by her grave. On the way, Yotza Rochel al Kivro. Rachel will come out of her grave, ubocha. She will cry, v'akeshes aleim rachmim, and she'll supplicate Hashem for rachmim, for mercy. Shenemar, a posuk in Yirmiyah, kol b'ram and ishma, v'akadosh baruch hu mishiva, and Hashem will respond to her tefillah, to her supplication. Yeshocha l'pulosech num Hashem, you have reward for your action. V'shovu banim l'vulam, and because of her supplication, the children return to their boundaries. It's difficult. If you know somebody's harboring ill feeling to you, and you could explain it, why did Yaakov allow all these years to pass? He'd say when he's a child he doesn't understand. Yosef at the age of 17 was the wisest of all his children. He appointed to be the leading shepherd before he was sold. He says, I know all these years you've been harboring ill feeling. Yaakov finally goes to Egypt. He spends 17 years in Egypt with his son Yosef. When does he share this with his son Yosef? Right before he's about to die. I know all these years you've been harboring ill feeling against me, but I want to explain it to you. Why now? Why shouldn't have explained it immediately? If somebody's harboring ill feeling, and if he'd understand, he would not. Yaakov should have explained it immediately. It was through divine dictate, so it's not a disrespect. It's not that it's a disrespect why I buried your mother on the way, because she's crucial and essential to the future of Klal Yisrael, that we should return from exile. So why didn't he explain it? The two things a person's able to understand something intellectually, and there's something, even if you understand it, but if you don't fully internalize it and fully integrate it into your every part of your emotion and mind, the answer is an answer, but it doesn't relieve the pain or the disappointment. And for that, very often, you need siyata dishmaya. I'll give you an example. If a person is destined should be a leader, until you become a leader merits special divine assistance to lead properly, especially if he's meant to be a leader. He merits siyata dishmaya. But until he arrives at the point to assume the position of leadership, he doesn't have that divine assistance. You only have the divine assistance to assume the role of leader. Therefore, when is Yosef going to assume the role of successor? Only when Yaakov passes away. So therefore, this piece of information, of course Yosef understands it. The man is genius beyond. As we see, when he interpreted the dreams of Paro, he says, have we ever seen a person with the Spirit of God in him? This is divine genius. This is not human genius. That's what Paro said. And Paro was the monarch of the leading civilization of the world. Yosef had one of a kind of intellect. But it's two separate issues. This word, it has to resonate within you. You have to be able to fully absorb it and internalize the reality of the importance of that. That you need special divine assistance for that. You need siyata dishmaya. Who, at this moment, Yosef is meant to take over the mantle of leadership from Yaakov to preserve the sanctity and the purity of Klal Yisrael despite the environment. Now he's ready to be explained. Until now, the words would have fallen on, relatively speaking, on deaf ears. Now you have the capacity to fully grasp and understand how important, how crucial and vital it is that your mother should be buried on the way. Because ultimately, when they go into exile, the only thing that will bring them back is your mother coming out on her grave and crying to Hashem, supplicating Hashem, and then it will be Shovu Banim L'Gvulam. Only then. We find something phenomenal. You know, we find that Nadav and Avihu were the most two special sons of Aaron HaKohen. But yet, when they inaugurated the Mishkan on the 8th day, because they brought a strange fire, they had sacrificed the incense offering, not as they should have, they were struck down. And they just entered into adulthood, both of them. They were both in the 14th year of their lives. And it was a tragedy. As it says, the Beis Yisrael should cry for this burning, that they were struck down. It's tragic. The Shnei B'nei Aaron, two sons of Aaron. And what was the value of that, of dying? Moshe originally was informed, B'Krovei HaKodesh, that the day the Mishkan will be erected on a permanent basis, I will be sanctified through those who are most holy to me. So Moshe originally said to Aaron, this is the way he consoled him. He says, originally I thought it would be you or me, that we would be the ones to die. But it was your children who died. That indicates they are holy than we are. They are more special in a certain context than we are. Because I knew B'Krovei HaKodesh, through those who are most holy, that's why I will be sanctified. So since they were chosen to be the ones, it's something special. Now, why were none of you? Why were they struck down? At the time of Kabbalah Torah, it says the Shekhinah, the divine presence, was at a level which was at a very unique level of presence. And it says they, together with the Zekanim, with the elders, they looked directly at the divine presence, which was a disrespect. It was disrespect. And because of that disrespect, they all deserved, they were the 70 elders, they deserved to die. So why did God strike them down then? Because since there was the celebration of the receiving of Torah at Sinai, it would have undermined the Simchas HaTorah, the rejoicing of receiving the Torah, becoming God's people. So God delayed the punishment, at the time when the Mishkan was established, took on a permanent level. That's why they were struck down. So they were struck down because they sinned. At their level, it was considered sinful what they had done. But as much as it was sinful, but ultimately, their death was was utilized in what context? For Krovi HaKodesh. That was for Kiddush Hashem. So we find punishment, but because they were so special, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, even though you're being punished for what you had done, but we're going to maximize that you'll have the greatest level of benefit from that. Not only will you be atoned, simultaneously you will bring about the ultimate sanctification of my name. That God doesn't look away from, as small as the infraction may be, as perfect as you may be, God is Daino Emes. God is the equitable judge. You're deserving reward, you get your reward. You deserve to be punished, as minute, as minor as the imperfection may be, justice means you have to be punished. That's the Kiddush Hashem. What happened to the others of Canaan? What happened to the old elders? We find by the slav, because they ate the slav, they died. So they were like swept under the carpet. They had to be punished, they were punished. Later, for what they... But what was the value of the punishment? Just purely atonement. But there was no positive value in terms of they being beneficiaries of something other than atonement. We find something else. Ruvain initially was meant to be, was the Bechor. Ruvain being the Bechor, he deserved to be the king. He deserved Kuna. But because he went after Rachel passed away, and Yaakov had put the bed of his own bed in the tent of Bilah, and Ruvain took it very personal. He took the bed out of the tent of Bilah and put it in the tent of Leah. What did he say? He says, that Yaakov's tent was in the tent of Rachel, Yaakov's bed was the tent of Rachel, it's okay for my mother to be the co-wife of her sister. But to be the co-wife of a maidservant, that Yaakov's bed should be in the tent of a maidservant, that she should be treated as my wife's peer, that he cannot tolerate. So without consulting with his father, he took Yaakov's bed from Bilhah's tent and he put it into Leah's tent. The Torah says it's grave. The sin is grave. Vayishkav Ruvain Pelegesh Oviv. Bilah Pelegesh Oviv. It's as if it's equivalent to cohabiting with what? With Bilah. That's how serious it is. And because of this, he forfeited kingship, he forfeited the kuna. Very serious punishment. And Yaakov explains it to him. By the blessing, his pachas kemayim. You were impulsive, and because you're impulsive, because you switched the bed from one tent to another, you forfeited all the rights of a firstborn, which is kingship and to be the officiant of Hashem. But it's unbelievable. We find then when Yosef's brothers, he came looking for them, and the relationship was strained to the nth degree, and they notice him, they say, we will kill him. We will kill him. And we'll see what the value of those dreams are, whether he will dominate us. Vayishma Ruvain. Ruvain hears the conversation. Vayatzileu miyodam. He saves them. He saves Yosef from the hands. Vayoma lo nakenu novish. Let us not smite him to take his life. Vayoma lehem Ruvain al tishpu dam. Don't shed blood. Hashlichos el labor hazeh. Throw him into this pit. Asher b'midbar, which is in the desert. V'yad al tishlubo. Don't extend your hand upon him. But what was his intent? L'man hatzel osem yodam lashivo el oviv. Now, why did they want to kill him? Because they were enraged. A person in the rage state doesn't think rationally. But you understand, if you act in the state of rage, once the act is completed, you can't undo what you did. So God forbid if they kill him, and afterwards they realize they made a mistake, they can't bring him back to life. So you know what Ruvain says? Ruvain himself already experienced this. He acted impulsively. Because of his impulsiveness, without thinking rationally, he took the bed of Yaakov from the tent of Bilhah and put it into the tent of his mother. He paid dearly for it. He learned a lesson so well. He tasted that bitter pill to such a level. He learned his lesson for us. You cannot act impulsively, because sometimes you do something, you regret it forever because you can't undo your mistake. Because he learned the lesson so well, he prevented Yosef from being killed. Chas v'sholom, if Yosef would have been killed, there wouldn't be a Klal Yisrael. There would not be a Jewish people. So even though factually he wasn't the Bechor in terms of kingship and being the Kohen, but why is there a Klal Yisrael? Because he learned the lesson well, that what he forfeited because of impulsiveness, if they act impulsively due to their rage, so this, and this is the Seforno, by preventing an action which comes upon suddenly, which causes an iniquity that cannot be corrected once it's done. And sometimes a tzaddik is ensnared in this setting where suddenly something comes and you make that split-second decision based on your emotion. Kinyan Ruvain and Bilhah. As Ruvain had this situation with Bilhah, Kamru Pachas Kamayim, his father reprimanded him. He says, because you flow like uncontrolled water. Because you're impulsive. And he understood that. Because of that, that's why Yosef was saved. Without Yosef, we couldn't have survived Egypt. Without Yosef, there wouldn't have been Ephraim and Manasseh. And Yaakov, why did he grieve all the years? Because he had a Mesorah, he had a tradition that if any one of his children die in his lifetime, he will not have a share in the world to come, and he's going to be in Gehenna. All this, Chas v'sholom, could have been true if Ruvain wouldn't have had the experience with switching the bed. And so because he had learned it and internalized it, as he did, therefore, due to him, that's the reason why Yosef was alive. So even though it's true, he forfeited A and B, kingship and priesthood, but ultimately, why is there a Klal Yisrael? It's due to the lesson that he learned well and prevented the tragedy which couldn't have been recovered.